I saw my husband's wedding ring flash under the rooftop lights just before he slid that same hand under another woman's jaw. "Tell your wife the board dinner ran late," she murmured against his mouth, smiling like she owned the skyline and everyone standing under it. I had crossed downtown Dallas in heels with our anniversary gift still in a velvet bag. I was 2 steps from their table when a woman in a slate gray suit blocked my path and said, "If you touch either of them, they'll erase what matters before sunrise. Sit down. In 11 minutes, their money starts bleeding. Tell me first, would you expose them on the spot, or smile and bury them later?" I stood there with my pulse slamming behind my eyes, staring past the woman's shoulder at my husband and the red-lipped brunette he was kissing under strings of white lights 42 stories above downtown Dallas. The city glittered below us, glass towers, brake lights, summer heat trapped in concrete. Music floated across the rooftop from a jazz trio near the bar, too polished, too expensive, too calm for the way my life had just cracked open. My husband, Gavin Shaw, had texted me 23 minutes earlier. "Board dinner ran long. Don't wait up. I hate missing tonight. I'll make it up to you this weekend. Love you." We had been married 11 years. I had spent the afternoon wrapping a vintage Omega watch I bought off a reseller in Fort Worth because Gavin once stopped in front of a jeweler's window and said, half joking, that a man knew he'd made it when his watch looked older than his car. I'd laughed at the time. We did that a lot in the beginning, turned ambition into a private joke so it wouldn't turn sharp between us. Now he was leaning over a candlelit rooftop table with Evelyn Wren, CEO of Wren Urban Holdings, a woman whose face had appeared in business magazines often enough that I recognized her before my brain even caught up to the rest. 46, widow, real estate queen. The woman who made the Dallas Business Journal call her ruthless with a complimentary tone. She wore black silk. He wore the navy suit I paid to have tailored in May. Her hand was on his tie. His hand was in her hair. And a stranger had just told me not to ruin whatever was about to happen next. "Move," I said. She didn't move. Up close, she looked late 40s, maybe 50, compact and controlled, dark hair cut sharp at the jaw. No jewelry except a steel watch and a thin wedding band that looked old enough to have survived things. Her eyes did not flicker. People who lied a lot tend to over-explain or over-soften. She did neither. "My name is Naomi Cade," she said. "I'm a forensic investigator working for Blackridge Lenders and 2 limited partners in Wren Urban Holdings. If you walk over there right now, Gavin Shaw and Evelyn Wren will know the leak reached you. By morning, servers get wiped, phones disappear, and the only person left holding the debt will be you." I heard one word. Debt. For a second the rooftop fell out from under me. What debt? Naomi slid a business card into my hand. Cade Risk Advisory. Her name, her license number. A downtown address I recognized because one of my commercial clients occupied the same building. Then she said, very quietly, "Your husband forged your signature on a personal guarantee tied to a shell vendor and used your company as collateral. Sit down, Miss Navarro. Be furious in 5 minutes. Right now, be useful." I wish I could tell you I handled that like a movie character. I didn't. My knees actually threatened to fold. I gripped the back of an empty chair hard enough to feel my tendons straining and looked back at the table where Gavin had finally stopped kissing her and was laughing at something Evelyn said. Laughing. On our anniversary. With a woman who, if Naomi was telling the truth, had not only helped him wreck my marriage but had reached into my business too. My business was Alvarez Response Group. Fire, flood, storm, mold, commercial mitigation and rebuild. We were the people property managers called at 2:11 a.m. when a sprinkler main burst on the 9th floor or a restaurant kitchen fire turned a dining room into wet black ruin. We arrived first, before the insurance adjusters and before the "what do we do now" had finished echoing through the building. We dried, cleaned, tore out, rebuilt. We put dead spaces back into service. I had built it from 1 cargo van and 2 dehumidifiers bought used off a liquidation site 12 years earlier. No one touched my company and walked away smiling. "Sit," Naomi repeated. I sat. Not because I trusted her. Because the word collateral had sliced straight through the rest of me. Naomi took the chair across from me. A waiter drifted over, saw my face, saw hers, and asked if we needed anything. Naomi ordered sparkling water for both of us like she had every right in the world to take over my table on the worst night of my life. Then she looked at me and said, "Do not look at them again for a minute, listen first." I did not want to listen. I wanted broken glass. I wanted to scream so loud it cracked every sleek window in downtown Dallas. I wanted Gavin to look up, see me, and feel the floor drop out from under him. Instead, I kept my eyes on Naomi. Ren Urban has a project called Auraline, she said. 48 luxury units in Victory Park. The numbers stopped making sense 6 months ago. Cost overruns, change orders, payments to vendors that don't exist in any meaningful way. Our clients suspected money was being moved off book. We traced several payments to an entity called Northloop Site Services. That means nothing to me. It shouldn't. Northloop has no crews, no warehouse, no equipment. It's a mailbox, a website built 3 months ago, and an operating account used to catch money. The account application includes a personal guarantee signed by you. I stared at her. No. It includes a copy of your driver's license, a digital signature, and corporate documents for Alvarez Response Group. My mouth went dry. That's impossible. Is it? Does your husband know your date of birth, your social, your address, your licensing records, the name of your banker, and where you keep your formation documents? Each word landed clean and heavy. Yes, 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 yes. Naomi let that sit. The guarantee cap's at $480,000, she said. Northloop received $360,000 over the last 8 months. From there, the money moved in pieces. Some to a penthouse lease in Uptown, some to luxury travel, some into a consulting LLC controlled by your husband. My husband doesn't have a consulting LLC. Naomi tipped her head a fraction. He does. August Harbor Advisory, registered 13 months ago through a formation service in Delaware. Beneficial owner Gavin Edward Shaw. You weren't meant to know. The waiter returned with water. I picked up the glass because my hands needed a job and found they were shaking badly enough for the ice to click against the side. Below us, downtown glowed like it was selling a version of life I had apparently been too busy working to notice. When did this start? I asked. The affair or the fraud? I laughed once. It sounded ugly. Both. The affair began at least 13 months ago, probably earlier. The document trail starts 11 months ago. The forged guarantee was executed in September. First draw against it was October 3rd. October 3rd. I had been in a flooded hotel basement in Irving on October 3rd, knee-deep in brown water with 3 technicians and a pump crew, trying to save a boiler room before mold turned the whole place into a lawsuit. Gavin had texted me around midnight that night. Proud of you. You always save the day. I nearly threw up. Naomi leaned forward. I need you to hear the next part clearly. If you confront him now, he'll know the guarantee surfaced. By tomorrow morning, Evelyn Wren's legal team will frame you as a bitter spouse making false claims because you caught an affair. If you stay calm tonight, I can get you copies of the filings, wire summaries, and timestamp surveillance showing they've been using that penthouse regularly. Then you hire counsel before sunrise and lock your company down before he reaches the office. I looked past her despite myself. Gavin was pouring Evelyn wine now. He bent toward her with that attentive tilt of the head he used to reserve for me when I was telling him about my day. Not because he understood air movers or moisture maps or insurance scopes, but because once upon a time he had liked watching me care about something. I remembered the first year we were married, in our tiny rental near Lower Greenville, when he would wait up for me after emergency jobs. I would come home smelling like smoke and bleach and wet drywall, and he would hand me microwave leftovers on our hand-me-down couch and say, "Tell me which building you saved tonight, hero." At some point that version of him had died. Or maybe it had never existed at all. Maybe it had only been on loan until better rooms opened for him. Why are you helping me? I asked. I'm not helping you out of charity. Naomi's tone stayed level. You are the unsecured party they assumed would never look up. If you move correctly, you can cut off their exit route. That helps my clients. It also happens to help you. She reached into a slim leather folder and slid a single page across the table. I saw my name at the top. Personal Guarantee. Alvarez Response Group, LLC. The signature at the bottom looked enough like mine to pass at a glance. The kind of forgery done by someone who had watched me sign checks, holiday cards, loan renewals, and school forms for years. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. That's not my signature. I know. The rooftop breeze shifted. Somewhere behind me, glass clinked and someone laughed too loudly. Across the city, a helicopter crossed the dark like a moving star. I stared at the forged version of my name and felt something cold and precise start assembling inside me. Not heartbreak. Heartbreak had already happened the second I saw his hand on another woman. This was different. This was architecture. This was load-bearing damage. Talk, I said. So Naomi talked. Evelyn Wren had inherited half of Ren Urban after her husband died in a helicopter crash outside Aspen 6 years earlier. She expanded fast. Too fast. Flashier projects, riskier leverage, prettier renderings, thinner margins, the kind of growth that looks brilliant right up until interest rates rise and buyers stop pretending glass towers are necessities. Oreline was supposed to be her crown jewel. Instead, it was swallowing cash. Gavin had joined Ren Urban 4 years earlier as a finance vice president, smart enough with numbers to become useful and hungry enough with status to become dangerous. He moved up fast because men like Gavin were custom-built for boardrooms: smooth voice, expensive haircut, controlled smile, no visible sweat. He knew how to say difficult things in reassuring language. He knew how to make creditors feel patient and subordinates feel chosen. He also knew my company. He knew our operating margins, our bank covenants, our line of credit capacity, which contracts paid clean, which clients paid slow, when my controller took vacation, and which lender trusted me because I had never missed a payment in 12 years. He knew because pillow talk is still data if the person beside you has no honor. When Oreline started bleeding cash, Evelyn didn't want the board to know how bad it was. Gavin proposed bridge solutions, friendly vendors, temporary structures. Money moved from one bucket to another until unit pre-sales closed and the math healed itself. Except the math never heals itself when the numbers are lies. Northloop Site Services became one of the buckets, a fake emergency remediation vendor. A company that could plausibly exist because big construction projects always need water extraction, mold prevention, site stabilization, dust containment, my world, my language, my credibility. To open a larger trade line and satisfy Blackridge, Northloop needed a guarantor with a real operating history. So Gavin used me. He copied my driver's license from our home office file drawer, used my business documents, signed my name, submitted everything through a broker who never met me in person because Gavin handled it digitally. Why not use Evelyn? I asked. Because lenders scrutinize principals already tied to the project. A third-party guarantor with clean books and a legitimate service company looked safer, Naomi said. Especially one whose owner was too busy running actual jobs to notice a fraudulent filing attached to a fake vendor. It was such a specific kind of contempt that I almost admired its efficiency. Not enough to forgive it, enough to understand it. To Gavin and Evelyn, I had not been a wife. I had been a reliable asset. A quiet machine, a signature, a woman who worked while they drank on rooftops and moved money through the dark. When were you going to tell me? I muttered, not to Naomi. To the empty air. To the version of Gavin still standing in our kitchen some mornings in a white dress shirt, kissing our daughter's forehead before school. Naomi heard me anyway. He wasn't. I looked at her. People like your husband don't confess when the structure still holds. They confess when the ceiling drops. That line stayed with me. People like your husband don't confess when the structure still holds. The jazz trio ended one song and eased into another. A server passed with a tray of tiny desserts no one here needed. Somewhere near the bar, a pair of venture capital men were talking too loudly about margin compression like it was something brave. At 8:57 p.m., my marriage became a series of numbers and timestamps. At 9:03 p.m., I stopped wanting to cry. At 9:08 p.m., Naomi's phone buzzed once on the table. She glanced down, then back up. That was the copy team. We have the broker file mirror. You can leave. That's it? For tonight? Yes. Go home. Say nothing. Do not wake your daughter and kiss her like you're leaving for war, because children smell war. Act normal. At 6:30 a.m. Call a lawyer before you call anyone else. Freeze every banking permission Gavin has. Pull device access logs. Change your DocuSign credentials. Then decide how expensive you want his life to become. I almost laughed. How expensive? There are phrases that only make sense to people who have built something from the ground up. Money is not just money when you made it by hauling demo bags through August heat, when you signed the backs of payroll checks praying deposits would clear, when you cleaned soot out of your own nails because there was no one else to send. Gavin hadn't just cheated on me. He had priced me in. What about them? I asked, flicking my gaze toward his table. Naomi followed it once and then looked back. They'll go upstairs in 20 minutes. There's a private residence-level suite being held under another name. My team will document entry. That's for the investors. Your win is somewhere else. I reached into my clutch and found the little velvet watch box. I had carried it here like an idiot with hope tucked in satin. For one wild second, I pictured walking across that rooftop, setting it on their table and saying, "Keep it. You clearly already bought each other everything else." But Naomi was right. That would have fed my pain for 10 seconds and fed their defense for 10 months. So I stood. My legs were steadier now. Naomi stood with me. "You really think I can bury them later?" I asked. Her expression did not change, but something in it sharpened with recognition, as if she had met this version of me before, in 100 different people. "I think if you stay disciplined," she said, "you can choose the ground they drown on." I left the rooftop without looking back. The elevator ride down felt longer than my entire marriage. A young couple in cocktail clothes stepped in at the 36th floor, laughing over something on a phone screen. They smelled like expensive perfume and bourbon. I stood with my anniversary gift in one hand and my new knowledge in the other, and stared at my reflection in the mirrored doors. 39. Black dress, gold hoops. Hair pinned up because Gavin once said he liked seeing my neck. A face that had just become older without moving. In the lobby, the doorman smiled and asked if I needed my car brought around. I said yes in a voice so normal it scared me. Outside, Dallas in June still held the day's heat like a grudge. My truck, a white F-150 with Alvarez Response Group on the door in blue block letters, looked obscene next to the matte black sedans under the valet canopy, too real for the fantasy being sold upstairs. I had almost felt self-conscious about bringing it tonight. Now it was the only honest thing in sight. I sat behind the wheel and did not start the engine right away. Instead, I looked at my hands. 3 scars across the knuckles from demolition work, a pale crescent on my thumb from a utility blade slip in 2018, wedding ring still on. I took the ring off, set it in the cup holder, and drove home. Our daughter Inez was asleep when I got there. She was 8, all long limbs and stubborn lashes, sprawled diagonally across her bed with one sock missing, and a paperback open face down near her pillow like she had lost the fight mid-chapter. Her room still smelled faintly like the strawberry shampoo she preferred, and the watercolor paints she left uncapped whenever she thought no one was looking. I stood in the doorway for a full minute and let the sight of her anchor me. Children divide your life into measurable truths. Before them, after them, what breaks them, what protects them, what they will remember even if they don't have the language for it yet. Inez loved her father. She loved the Saturday pancakes he flipped too high, the private jokes in the carpool lane, the way he pretended not to know multiplication so she could correct him with theatrical outrage. She did not know that he had used her mother's name like a counterfeit bill. She did not know that the board dinner keeping him away on our anniversary involved another woman's lipstick. She did not need to know tonight. I went downstairs, poured myself water, and sat in the dark kitchen until 10:14 p.m. When Gavin came home. You learn a lot about a marriage from the way the front door sounds when one person is lying. He came in soft. Not sneaking exactly. Calibrated. I heard him set his keys down in the ceramic bowl by the entry. Heard the pause when he saw me at the table. Heard the microsecond where his body decided what version of himself would enter the room. "Hey," he said, "you're still up." I looked at him and understood, in one clean, brutal sweep, how often I had accepted performance for sincerity. He looked perfect. Tie loosened, top button open, hair slightly disturbed in a way that suggested a long evening rather than a woman's hands. He smelled like cedar cologne and hotel soap. That last detail almost made me smile. He had showered before coming home. On our anniversary. "Couldn't sleep," I said. His face softened into the husband expression. Concern with a side of practiced warmth. "I'm sorry about tonight. It was a mess." Evelyn kept moving people from dinner to drinks to another discussion upstairs. You know how these things go. I had known him 14 years. I had watched him lie to clients about traffic, to friends about not being able to make dinner, to his mother about whether he liked the sweater she sent at Christmas. Small lies, harmless lies, social grease. I had once thought that because he lied gently he would never lie cruelly. Turns out cruelty doesn't always arrive yelling. Sometimes it arrives with a tired smile and says, "You know how these things go." I lifted the velvet box from beside me and slid it across the table. "Happy anniversary," I said. He blinked. Maybe guilt, maybe surprise, maybe just the inconvenience of a prop he hadn't planned for. He opened the box, his eyes widened for real this time. "Celeste." "Vintage," I said. "You're welcome." He looked up. "You didn't have to do this." "No," I said. "I didn't." He came around the table, leaned down, and kissed the top of my head. I let him. That was the last gift I ever gave him. He went upstairs 10 minutes later, saying he had an early lender call and needed sleep. I listened to the shower run in our bathroom for exactly 4 minutes, then the closet doors, then the bed creak once beneath his weight. At 11:02 p.m. When the house was quiet, I opened my laptop. A person can change direction in one night if enough truth arrives at once. By 11:30, I had reset every password tied to Alvarez Response Group that Gavin had ever known. Banking portal. Payroll system, DocuSign, cloud storage. Insurance account, state licensing dashboard. Vendor management logins. He had once helped me organize some of it during a software switch 2 years earlier. At the time, it felt like partnership. Now it felt like leaving windows open in hurricane season. Atolv. Fema. M.A. Naomi sent an encrypted link. No message, no greeting, just evidence. I clicked. The first file was the guarantee. The second was a broker email chain showing Gavin submitting supporting documents on my behalf from a Proton address created under the alias C. Navarro admin. The third was a North Loop bank summary. The fourth was a spreadsheet of outbound transfers. Penthouse lease in Uptown, $11,800, month, private car service. Aspen Resort, consulting retainer to August Harbor Advisory, jewelry. Wine club, furniture, campaign contribution routed through another entity, a payment to a cosmetic clinic, a watch boutique on Knox Street. The watch boutique made me go still. In February, Gavin had given me earrings for my birthday and said he had to rush between meetings to find them. He had looked almost proud when I opened the box. The summary showed a $14,200 payment to the same boutique 2 days earlier. For Evelyn, probably. Maybe for both of them. The cruelty of betrayal is not only in the large wound, it is in the way it retroactively poisons ordinary memories. Birthdays, groceries, car rides. The sentence, drive safe. The hand on the small of your back at a restaurant. Suddenly every sweet thing becomes evidence with its own shadow. At 12:42 a.m., I found the forged copy of my driver's license attachment and finally cried. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one hard, furious spill of tears because he had taken the most boring, most practical, most administrative pieces of my life and weaponized them. Not my heart first, my paperwork. My trust in systems. The part of marriage no one photographs because it is too plain. Shared files, shared passwords, shared signatures, shared assumptions about what the other person would never do. At 1:03 a.m., the tears were gone. At 1:15, I emailed Mara Quinn. Mara and I were not friends. We were something more useful, women who respected each other's thresholds. 5 years earlier, a hotel group tried to pin black mold delays on my company after their own maintenance failures turned one property into a fungal ecosystem with room service. Mara had represented their insurer and still managed to speak to me like I was a person, not a nuisance. She later left that firm and built a boutique practice downtown handling business divorce, fraud, emergency injunctions, and rich people who believed documentation was optional if they wore the right shoes. I wrote, need urgent help by 6:30 a.m. Fraud, forged guarantee, marital issue, possible asset shielding. I have documents. No one knows I know. Can you meet before business hours? She replied at 1:19. 6:15. My office. Bring everything. Do not alert him. I slept maybe 40 minutes. At 5:52. I was in the kitchen making coffee while Gavin came downstairs in running clothes. He kissed my cheek. Morning. Morning. He poured cold brew into a travel cup, checked his watch, and said he might stay late again because Orline financing was at a sensitive stage. I slid a banana toward him because apparently I deserved an Oscar. Good luck, I said. He smiled. I watched him walk out the door carrying the body of a husband and the habits of a thief. Then I locked it behind him. Mara Quinn's office sat on the 11th floor of a limestone building in Uptown that still believed in doors heavy enough to intimidate you. She opened hers at 6:14 wearing a cream blouse, navy trousers, and the expression of a woman who had already read 3 ugly emails before sunrise and expected a fourth. Mara was 44, tall, sharp-featured, impossible to fluster. Her hair was pinned back so neatly it felt like a warning. She didn't waste time on comfort phrases. Conference room, she said. Coffee's terrible but hot. By 6:22, she had the guarantee in one hand, Naomi's summary on the table, and 2 legal pads open. When I finished walking her through the rooftop, the affair, North Loop, the forged filing, and the fact that Gavin was on his way to work unaware, I knew any of it. Mara leaned back and exhaled once through her nose. Well, she said, your husband has ambition, I'll give him that. Can you help me? Yes. The question is how far you want to go before lunch. Far. That got the slightest nod. Good. Here's the immediate path. We treat the fraud and the marriage as related but distinct wars. If you mix your grief into the paperwork, they'll use it against you. If you let the paperwork lead, the grief gets teeth. That was why I called her. She thought in structures. By 6:40 a.m., we had a plan. First, notify my bank's fraud division and relationship manager that any guarantee tied to North Loop Site Services was unauthorized and forged. Demand an immediate freeze on any pending exposure connected to Alvarez Response Group. Second, revoke Gavin's authority across every business and financial platform. He was never an official manager of my company, but he had informal access to too much adjacent information. Third, file an emergency petition to prevent enforcement against my company while forensic review proceeded. Fourth, preserve every device in our home without tipping him if possible. Since Texas is not a state where you freelance your way through privacy law without consequences, Mara was careful. We would preserve what was mine, request what was mine, and compel the rest later. Fifth, prepare for divorce. When she said that last part, something inside me tightened and settled at the same time. Mara saw it. You still deciding whether to save the marriage? She asked. No. Good, then don't drift into nostalgia at noon and blow up what we're building at 9. I looked at her. She slid a yellow pad toward me. Make a list. Every account, every property, every time he had access to your documents, every weird expense, every suspicious trip, every point where your instincts rang and you talked yourself out of them. Memory gets slippery under shock. Get it on paper while it still has edges. So I wrote, house in Lakewood, my truck, his BMW lease, our joint savings, Inez's education fund, the home office file cabinet, the scanner, the old laptop Gavin sometimes used on weekends, his unexplained Houston trips, the silver keycard on his ring I never recognized, the sudden interest in asset protection, the way he had asked in September whether my lender ever required in-person verification for guarantees. That last one stopped me cold. He had asked while I was unloading groceries. Casual voice. Curious husband tone. I answered without thinking because that is what marriage trains you to do. I had handed him the lock combination while he was still stealing the safe. Mara watched my face change. What? He asked me about lender verification months ago. Write it down. I did. By 7:18, Mara's paralegal had my signed fraud affidavit. By 7:31, my bank had acknowledged receipt and escalated internally. By 7:46, our filing was being walked to the courthouse. By 8:05, my controller, June Patel, was in my office with the door closed, receiving the shortest and most unpleasant briefing of her career. June had been with me 6 years. Former hotel finance manager, sharp as wire, never surprised by anything except maybe human stupidity, and even then only briefly. When I told her Gavin was cut off from all company systems immediately, and no document bearing my signature went out without verbal confirmation from me or her, she didn't ask for gossip. She asked, how much exposure? Cap is 480, current draw maybe 360. Her mouth thinned. Can they touch operating cash? Not if we move fast enough. Then let's move faster. I could have hugged her. Instead, I handed her the new authorization sheet and watched her turn into the calmest version of violence available in commercial administration. At 9:12 a.m., Gavin called. I looked at the screen. My husband. The contact photo was from a beach weekend in Port Aransas 3 years earlier. He had sunscreen on his nose because Inez put it there and he left it for half an hour to make her laugh. I answered on the third ring. Hey, I said. His voice was pleasant, but I heard it immediately, the slight strain under the polish. Morning. Weird question. Did you change any business permissions last night? Yes. A beat. Why? My company. My permissions. Another beat, smaller this time. He was recalibrating. Sure. It just flagged one of my browser saves because I used your DocuSign once for the foundation sponsorship forms. He said it cleanly. Almost elegant, really. Men like Gavin survive because they can lie in complete sentences while the floor is already burning under them. I'm tightening internal controls, I said. Audit stuff. He laughed lightly. You sound like me. Do I? I looked out my office window at a crew loading drying mats into Van 3 for a school water loss in Richardson. Work. Real work. Noise that fixed things. Big day? He asked. For you or me? He paused. Then, Celeste, is everything okay? That was the first honest question he'd asked in almost a year. Yes, I said. Everything is getting much clearer. He said my name again, softer now, testing danger. I smiled into the silence so he could not hear it. Good luck with financing, I said, and hung up. At 10:03 a.m., Blackridge's counsel contacted Mara. They had reviewed our affidavit and agreed to suspend further draw access tied to the Northloop guarantee pending forensic validation. It was not victory yet. It was something better in the short term. Interruption. At 10:47 a.m., Gavin called again. I let it go to voicemail. At 10:49, he texted. Did someone contact Blackridge from your side? What is going on? At 10:50, another text. Call me now. At 10:53, Celeste, don't do anything drastic before we talk. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not what have you heard. Not are you okay. Don't do anything drastic before we talk. As if exposure were the dangerous act and not the fraud itself. By noon, the first leak hit. Not public, not yet. Internal. A board member at Ren Urban asked why Blackridge had frozen a vendor facility hours before a closing package was due. Someone else asked why Northloop was guaranteed by a third-party remediation company whose owner had apparently filed a fraud statement that morning. Someone in legal started pulling PDFs. Someone in finance started sweating through an expensive shirt. The machine had finally been forced to notice the smell of its own smoke. At 1:22 p.m., Naomi called from a blocked number. They know the guarantee blew, she said. Evelyn's furious. Gavin tried to get into the broker chain through an outside contact and found the portal locked. Good. She thinks the leak came from the broker. She doesn't know about me. Keep it that way. Can she fix it? Not cleanly. The problem with fraud is that once one document gets sunlight, every other document starts needing shade. I leaned back in my chair and let that sentence settle. How bad is it really? I asked. For them, worse than I first thought. Northloop isn't the only bucket. Yours is just the dumbest because it put a real spouse under a fake signature. There are other side agreements, but this one threatens Gavin directly. He touched your documents. He can't explain that away with corporate jargon. What about the affair? Naomi was quiet for a second. He rented the penthouse, not Evelyn. He put the utilities in August Harbor's name. That matters because it ties personal benefit to diverted funds. Of course it did. Of course my husband had not only betrayed me, he had paid for the betrayal using money routed through fiction. Thank you, I said. She made a small sound that was not quite acknowledgement and not quite refusal. Stay boring for 48 hours, she said. Boring terrifies guilty people because they can't read it. Then she hung up. That afternoon I worked. Really worked. A nursing facility flood in Plano. A smoke remediation estimate in Garland. A hotel ceiling collapse from an AC overflow. 3 payroll questions. 1 insurance adjuster trying to shave line items like I would somehow forget how moisture works if he spoke slowly enough. The world keeps arriving even when your private life detonates. In some ways that saved me. Grief loves empty rooms. Work does not. At 5:41 p.m., Gavin walked into my office unannounced. June saw him first through the glass and buzzed once to warn me. He opened the door before I answered. No jacket, tie gone. Face composed the way men compose themselves when they think anger makes them look powerful instead of exposed. Can we talk? I looked at him for 2 full seconds and realized something astonishing. He was afraid of me, not because I was louder, not because I was crueler, because he could not tell how much I knew. Close the door, I said. He did. For a moment we just stood there with my office between us, my desk, my project boards, the framed photo of Inez in a raincoat, the drying equipment schedules, the city permit maps, the entire visible life he had apparently considered too plain to respect. You contacted Blackridge, he said. Yes. Without talking to me first. I almost laughed. You forged my signature first. The skin around his eyes tightened. There it was. The first crack. I can explain that. No, you can try. He dragged a hand over his mouth. It wasn't supposed to hit your company. It was temporary. Every nerve in my body went cold. There are statements so revealing they should be framed. It wasn't supposed to hit your company. As if the problem were collateral damage, not the bomb. Temporary, I repeated. He took a step forward. Celeste, listen to me. Orline got squeezed. We had a gap. Evelyn had bridge commitments coming in. This was a paperwork solution to get us through a cash timing issue. A paperwork solution. I know how it sounds. You forged my signature. I was going to unwind it before renewal. You forged my signature. His jaw flexed. Stop saying it like that. How would you prefer I say it? Creative marital finance? Strategic identity borrowing? Lower your voice. It was my office. My name on the lease. My company on the wall. My crews in the yard. My equipment in the warehouse. My life in every square foot. And he told me to lower my voice. I stood. You do not get to walk in here after kissing your boss on a rooftop on our anniversary and tell me what tone is acceptable." He went still. The color drained out of him so fast it was almost beautiful. For the first time since this started, I watched him lose control in real time. "You were there," he said. "Yes." The room felt very quiet. He looked past me for 1 second, maybe seeing the rooftop, maybe recalculating every lie he had told in the last 24 hours, and realizing how many had already died. "Celeste, don't." My voice came out low and razor thin. "Do not stand in my office and build a new lie on top of the old ones. I saw you. I have the guarantee. I have the broker chain. I have Northloop. I have August Harbor. The only thing I don't have yet is the exact moment you decided I was stupid enough to carry this for you indefinitely." He sank into the chair across from my desk as if his knees had simply made a private decision without him. For one mad second I remembered another time he sat there, bringing me takeout when I worked late on a school fire rebuild, feet on the wrong chair despite June's glare, smiling like he belonged to me. That is the ugly mercy of love. It does not vanish on schedule. It flickers in stupid places long after the building should have been condemned. "I didn't think you were stupid," he said at last. That almost hurt more. "No? No, I thought you trusted me." There it was, the truest thing he had said all day. I looked at him and saw the whole marriage differently, not as a partnership that had broken, as a trust system he had learned to exploit. "When did you start sleeping with her?" I asked. He closed his eyes briefly. "Does it matter?" "Yes. A year ago." "Try again." He opened his eyes. 13 months. And something in me settled for good. Not because I finally knew, because he had finally stopped performing. "How many times did you come home to me after being with her?" His silence answered. "How many times did you let our daughter sit in your lap while you were carrying this around?" "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Use Inez." I leaned on my desk and smiled without warmth. "You used Inez every day you came home pretending to be her father and not a fraud risk in a tailored suit." He flinched. "Good. I never wanted this to touch her," he said. I believed him, actually. Not because he was decent. Because guilty people always imagine they can confine damage by intention. I opened the top drawer of my desk, took out the envelope Mara prepared, and set it in front of him. He looked at it, then at me. "What is this?" "Read." He did. "Emergency notice regarding disputed guarantee, revocation of access, instruction not to contact my employees about company matters. Separate note from Mara Quinn's office requesting all future communication concerning marital finances go through counsel." His face changed line by line. "You hired a lawyer." "Yes." "For this?" "For everything." He dropped the pages onto the desk. "You're blowing up our family over one mistake. I thought I might actually admire the nerve if I didn't hate the man using it." "One mistake," I repeated softly. "Is that the affair or the forgery?" He stood again, anger finally outrunning caution. "You think it's that simple? You think you've been so perfect to live with? You were never home. You were always on call, always in a truck, always smelling like chemicals and acting like that was noble enough to carry the whole marriage." I let him finish. "Accusations are useful. They tell you what story the other person has been rehearsing to survive themselves." When he stopped, breathing hard, I said, "There it is." "What?" "The script you've been using to justify becoming exactly what you are." He stared at me. I kept going. "You could have left. You could have asked for a divorce. You could have cheated in the cowardly ordinary way and still been pathetic but at least recognizable. Instead, you used my company. You used my documents. You used the fact that I was busy building something real to turn me into cover for something fake. Don't insult me by calling that a marital rough patch." He looked away first. That mattered. People think power is volume. It isn't. Power is who can still hold eye contact when the truth gets fully named. "I'll fix the money," he said. "I can fix the money." "With what?" He didn't answer. "Exactly." He ran both hands through his hair, and for the first time all evening looked less like a polished executive and more like what he really was, a man who had borrowed too much life against too little character. "I don't want a war," he said. "You should have thought of that before forging my name." His mouth tightened. "What do you want?" A year earlier I might have said honesty, 10 years earlier I might have said us. That day I wanted something cleaner. "I want distance," I said. "From my company, from my accounts, from my bed, and from any illusion that you still get to narrate this." He stared at me a second longer, then nodded once. Very slight, very controlled. Men like Gavin only surrender at the surface first. "Should I move out?" he asked. "Yes." He laughed once under his breath, but there was no humor in it. "You really planned this?" "No." I said. You planned this. I just arrived before the roof collapsed. He left with the envelope in his hand. June appeared in my doorway 30 seconds later. You okay? No. Good. Means you're still human. I sat down hard in my chair. He said I was blowing up our family over one mistake. June rolled her eyes with such force it felt medicinal. Ah, the ancient hymn of the mediocre guilty man. I laughed despite myself, and that saved me more than she knew. Gavin moved into the penthouse 3 days later. He pretended it was temporary. He told Inez he had a work situation downtown and would still see her constantly. I told him we would discuss parenting through counsel because if he wanted access to my child, he was going to approach the subject like paperwork from now on. He hated that. He hated that I refused scenes. He hated that he could not bait me into texting something furious enough to screenshot later. He hated that when he sent, "Can we please be adults about this?" I replied, "Counsel only," 3 words. That was all. Sometimes the coldest revenge is administrative. The next few weeks turned into a war fought in conference rooms, email chains, temporary orders, lender calls, and document productions. Mara was relentless. She filed for divorce on fault and fraud-related financial misconduct grounds. She sought exclusive use of the marital home. She requested injunctive relief to prevent dissipation of assets. She pushed for forensic tracing of August Harbor, North Loop, related accounts, and any benefits Gavin received. She made sure every motion read like steel. When Gavin's lawyer tried the unhappy marriage, emotional lapse, no actual loss yet angle, Mara nearly smiled. No actual loss? She said across polished walnut in a mediation room. My client's signature was forged on a $480,000 guarantee. Exposure is loss. Fraud is not a love language. I almost loved her then. Evelyn Wren responded exactly the way powerful people do when they first discover consequences, with contempt disguised as confidence. Through counsel, she denied personal involvement in any impropriety regarding Northloop, denied knowledge of forgery, denied personal benefit from diverted funds, denied the affair in terms so carefully lawyered they might as well have been engraved. Then Naomi's team produced access logs, penthouse invoices, car service records, and a pattern of reimbursements too intimate to explain away. Contempt curdled into delay. Delay curdled into panic. The first public crack came in August, 2 months after the rooftop. Orline missed a lender deadline, then missed another. A trade publication ran a short item about vendor irregularities affecting project disbursements. Nothing dramatic, nothing television-worthy. Just enough for the industry people to start making discreet phone calls. And in cities like Dallas, discreet phone calls are how reputations begin to bleed out. I learned things in that season that no one tells you about betrayal. No one tells you how boring the destruction can look from the outside. How much of it is PDFs and calendar invites and parking garage elevators. How often the person who betrayed you still sounds annoyed instead of ashamed. How grief can sit quietly beside you while you sign school forms and order replacement air scrubbers and refill gas tanks and reply to opposing counsel. No one tells you how often you will remember the wrong detail. Not the kiss. Not even the forged signature. For me, it was a towel. 3 weeks before our anniversary, Gavin had left a damp white hotel towel in our bathroom hamper. I noticed because the brand tag wasn't ours, and because I had to tell Inez not to wipe paintbrushes on it. Gavin said the gym locker room must have mixed up his things. I had believed him. That memory came back while I was reviewing penthouse housekeeping invoices, and I had to put the file down for a full minute because betrayal is sometimes just a towel that did not belong in your house. In September, the court granted temporary orders. Exclusive use of the house to me, primary weekday possession of Inez pending further hearings. No transfer or encumbrance of major assets. Formal forensic review of disputed accounts. No contact by Gavin with my employees absent written business necessity approved by counsel. He looked stunned when the judge read the access restrictions. As if a man who forged signatures still expected the privileges of trust. Outside the courtroom, he caught up to me near the elevators. "Celeste, please." I turned. The hallway was chilled hard enough to make the polished floor smell faintly like bleach. Lawyers moved past in dark suits carrying heartbreak in accordion folders. The ceiling lights flattened everything. He looked tired now. Truly tired. The kind that gets into skin and makes expensive grooming irrelevant. "This is getting out of control," he said. "No, it's getting documented." He lowered his voice. "You think Evelyn's going to let me be the only one who goes down for this?" I studied him. Interesting. Not, "Are we really doing this?" Not, "I miss my daughter." Not, "I'm sorry." "You think Evelyn's going to let me be the only one who goes down for this?" The fear had finally found its real shape. You should have considered that before building your future on a woman whose whole business model is plausible deniability, I said. His face hardened. You don't know her. I almost laughed. I know enough. I know she let a married subordinate sign my name to cover a hole in her tower. That tells me everything. He stepped closer. You act like I did all this because I hated you. Didn't you? No. His eyes flashed. That's the problem. I loved you and I still wanted more. There are confessions that insult the air around them. I looked at him for one long second and understood the central rot in a man like Gavin. He did not believe wanting more required choosing less damage. He believed desire itself was exculpatory. Then you never knew what love was worth, I said, and walked away. By October, Evelyn cut him loose. Not publicly, not honestly. Ren Urban announced a leadership transition in the finance division tied to strategic restructuring. Gavin's severance was contingent on cooperation and non-disparagement. He signed because he had no leverage left. The penthouse went dark 2 weeks later. Utilities off. Cars stopped arriving. One of the doormen Naomi had once quietly paid to observe patterns told her Evelyn had not spent a full night there in over a month. That was when Gavin started trying to come back. He sent longer texts. I made catastrophic choices. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I miss our life. I miss breakfast with Inez. Please let me explain without lawyers. He wrote one email at 2:13 a.m. Subject line, I was not using you. I forwarded it to Mara without opening the attachment. She replied 13 minutes later, good instinct. Anything emotional they send may also be strategic. Keep forwarding. So I did. Meanwhile, June and I kept the company moving. A hospital wing leak. A courthouse pipe burst. An apartment fire that displaced 21 families. The ordinary brutal work of restoration. There is something clarifying about hauling containment poles into a smoke-black hallway after spending the morning in a legal conference over fraudulent shell entities. One problem is fake and expensive. The other is real and wet and right in front of you. I needed both to stay sane. The crews knew something was wrong, of course, not details, just weather. Men who have worked with you through 3 a.m. Sewage backups can read your face better than relatives sometimes. Darnell, my senior project manager, asked exactly once, loading scrubbers into a van after a warehouse job. You need us to circle up tighter for a while? That was all. No pity, no curiosity, just labor translated into loyalty. Yes, I said. He nodded. Done. That was the difference between people like Gavin and people like us. He built belonging where it looked useful. We built it where it held. The major break came in November. Blackridge finished its forensic review. Northloop could not substantiate services. The guarantee was formally rejected as fraudulent. A related review of project disbursements uncovered side letter approvals routed through Gavin and approved by Evelyn outside normal committee channels. A board subcommittee hired outside counsel. Outside counsel hired their own forensic accountants. And suddenly the tower that had seemed untouchable was full of men in dark coats carrying banker boxes. Naomi called me that night. You still awake? She asked. It's 11. For you, that means maybe. I was in the kitchen sealing a permission slip in Inez's backpack. What happened? Board counsel found the contingency memo. I straightened. What memo? Oraline had an internal contingency note from February. It flagged Northloop as an optics-sensitive stopgap and specifically mentioned third-party guarantor exposure. My grip tightened on the envelope. They knew. Evelyn did. Gavin did. Possibly one lawyer did. The board likely didn't. That memo kills the innocent oversight argument. For a second, all I could hear was the refrigerator hum and a dog barking 3 houses down. Naomi. Yeah? Thank you for stopping me that night. Silence. Then. I didn't stop you. You stopped yourself after the first 10 seconds. That's rarer than you think. She hung up before I could say anything else. In December, Ren Urban postponed Oraline indefinitely. The press release used phrases like market conditions and refinancing environment and portfolio optimization. Corporate language is fascinating if you speak its dialect. Portfolio optimization often means somebody finally looked under the rug and found teeth. By January, Gavin was not merely embarrassed. He was radioactive. Finance is a strange religion. Its gods are confidence and memory. Once enough people suspect you move numbers with dirty hands, they stop returning calls. And every room that once felt open becomes politely unavailable. He took consulting meetings, then smaller consulting meetings, then lunch with a recruiter who used the phrase reputational headwinds. which I only know because one of his forwarded Discovery emails included the recruiter's notes. Reputational headwinds. He had almost taken my company down on a forged signature, and some man in cufflinks called it headwinds. Divorce court finished what lenders started. Mara's strategy was simple and devastating. Never overreach, never melodramatize, never let the affair overshadow the money, or let the money sanitize the affair. Show the whole machine. The forged guarantee. The hidden LLC. The penthouse. The payments. The misuse of confidential household and business documents. The pattern of lies. The attempt to preserve image while endangering the family's actual stability. The discrepancy between his claimed remorse and his documented behavior after discovery. When Gavin's counsel floated equal custody with expanded weekday dinners and suggested I was over-identifying with work, Mara asked one question that seemed to rearrange the courtroom air. Who packed your daughter's lunch for school the morning after you came home from your anniversary date with Miss Wren? Gavin stared. It was such a small question. That was why it destroyed him. Because betrayal lives in grand acts, yes. But responsibility lives in mornings. I had packed the lunch, signed the field trip form, braided the hair, checked the reading log, handled the payroll, frozen the fraud, called the lawyer, kept the house from collapsing while he was still adjusting his tie. He had no answer that made him look like a father instead of a guest. Final orders came in February. The house stayed with me. I kept Alvarez response group in full. The disputed exposure tied to Northloop was severed from my business after forensic confirmation. Gavin took a reduced asset share after findings related to fraud and dissipation. I received a disproportionate portion of liquid marital funds. Parenting time favored me with school week primary custody and a graduated schedule for him. No one said the word punishment because courts prefer other vocabulary. But paper has its own moral tone when enough facts sit on it. Evelyn's ending came separately, which suited me. She resigned in March before the board could stage the theater of forced loyalty followed by sudden concern. Wren Urban said she was stepping aside for health and family priorities. I laughed out loud when I read it in a trade email at 6:12 a.m., over coffee in my kitchen. Health and family priorities. Translation. Lenders had run out of patience, counsel had run out of euphemisms, and she wanted 1 inch of dignity left to stand on. A class action investor suit followed. Then a creditor action. Then the slow, ugly sale of parts. Oraline never opened. The glass shells stood downtown for months half-wrapped, wind snapping at black weatherproofing like the building itself was trying to peel its own skin off. The first time I drove past it with Inez in the truck, she asked, "Why did they stop building that one?" I kept my eyes on the road and said, "Because sometimes people try to build too high on bad plans." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Kids understand structure better than adults think. A year after the rooftop, I spent our old anniversary very differently. No silk dress, no rooftop, no watch in velvet, no lying text glowing on my phone. I spent it at a minor league baseball game in Frisco with Inez and my younger brother Mateo, who heckled the home plate umpire with the reverence of a man practicing religion. We ate terrible nachos. Inez dropped half her lemonade. Mateo won her an oversized stuffed shark by spending $40 at a rigged toss booth and then swore he did it with skill. On the drive home, she fell asleep in the back seat with her cheek pressed against the shark's plastic eye. I glanced at her in the mirror at a red light and realized I had made it all the way through March 15th without thinking about the rooftop once, not because it no longer mattered, because it no longer owned the date. That night, after I tucked her in, I sat alone on the back patio with a beer and listened to the neighborhood settle into itself. Lawnmower smell still faint in the dark. A train somewhere far off. Sprinklers clicking 2 houses down. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello? Happy anniversary," Naomi Cade said. I smiled before I meant to. That's a terrible tradition. It's not a tradition. I was driving past downtown and thought of you. How's the skyline? Still full of liars and mirrored glass. That tracks. She was quiet a moment. How are you? There are questions that make you perform and questions that make you inventory. Hers always did the second. Busy, I said. Tired. Better. Meaner in useful ways. A small laugh came through the line. Good. You? Working. Still saving people from dramatic mistakes? No, she said, mostly documenting them. I leaned back in the patio chair and looked up at the dark branches overhead. You know, for a while I kept replaying those 10 seconds before you stopped me, wondering if part of me wanted the public explosion. Of course it did. And part of you wanted to live more than it wanted a scene. That sat in the air between us, clean and simple. Thank you, I said again. This time she let it land. You built the rest yourself, Celeste. Don't hand that credit away. After we hung up, I stayed outside a long time. Healing is a stupid word sometimes, too soft, too spa brochure for what actually happens. What happened to me was not healing in a gentle sense. It was demolition followed by rebuild, tear out, drying, sanitizing, reframing, systems check, code compliance, better materials where the old ones failed. I understood that language. It was the first one I ever trusted. A month later, Gavin showed up at Inez's spring recital in a suit that no longer fit him the same way. He had gotten thinner. His confidence had not disappeared exactly, but it now had seams, visible ones. We stood 3 feet apart in a school auditorium that smelled like floor wax and stage dust, while parents around us recorded children in paper flowers and cardboard moons. Celeste, he said. Gavin. He looked toward the stage, where second graders in pastel costumes were preparing to sing something about rainforests. She looks happy. She is. He nodded. You've done a good job. That line almost amazed me, not because it was praise, because it sounded like an outsider offering it. I turned to him. She's not a quarterly report. You don't compliment her stability like I achieved a metric. His mouth tightened. Then, unexpectedly, he said, I know. Maybe he did by then. Ruin teaches some men humility. It teaches others better language. I no longer cared which one he had learned. The music teacher waved for quiet. Lights dimmed. Before the recital started, he said one more thing. I really did love you. I kept my eyes on the stage. I know, I said. That's what made you dangerous. Then I watched our daughter step into the light and sing without once looking back to see whether either of us was broken. That is the thing I want you to understand if you've ever sat where I sat, heart blown open, paperwork contaminated, trust turned into a weapon while the guilty person still thinks they deserve the soft version of your reaction. Calm is not surrender. Silence is not confusion. And restraint is not weakness. Sometimes the most terrifying thing you can do to someone who expects tears, shouting, begging, or revenge theater is this. Learn the numbers. Lock the doors. Save the evidence. Protect the child. Call the right lawyer, and then let reality arrive in neat, undeniable stacks with your name nowhere dirty on them. The night I found Gavin kissing Evelyn on that rooftop, I thought I was about to lose everything in one public explosion. I was wrong. What I lost was a lie with good lighting. What I kept was the company I built, the daughter I protected, the house that stayed standing, the schedule of my own mornings, the right to say my name and know it belonged only to me. The skyline still glitters. Dallas still sells power in glass and steel. Men still mistake polish for character. Women still get underestimated if their work boots stay in the truck while they enter a fancy room in heels. Let them. I know what I am now. I am the woman they used as cover who learned how to become exposure. I am the signature they forged that came back with a lawyer. I am the quiet wife at the wrong table who did not flip the glasses, did not scream, did not rescue their dignity by making her pain look unstable. I let the money stop. I let the documents talk. I let the tower crack under its own lies. And when the dust settled, I was still standing on solid ground because I built mine honestly. So if someone ever tells you that keeping your composure means you loved less, don't believe them. Sometimes composure is the sharpest blade in the room. Sometimes the most devastating sentence in a collapsing life is not, I hate you. Sometimes it is, counsel only. Sometimes it is, that is not my signature. Sometimes it is, move out. And sometimes, if the person across from you has mistaken your steadiness for stupidity for far too long, the sentence that finally ends them is the simplest one of all. I know everything. If this hit you in the chest, tell me in the comments. Would you have exposed them that night, or let the paperwork destroy them later? Subscribe and stay close for the next story.